how is your own use of power reproducing or resisting structures? And we're all doing this. It's sort of false to pretend that we're not, right? It's about learning and being aware of how our language, especially the language that we use, let's say, in front of a big audience, might have impacts that we're not even aware of, right? And that's I think really important to just think about. These types of stereotypes, a lot of people would say linguistic and language ideologies. Okay, they're just stereotypes. Okay, great. Let's call language ideologies stereotypes. How are we reproducing or resisting stereotypes around language? We need to be careful about that because language is heavily, heavily stereotyped. And then the last one is one that I think a lot about. How are we potentially using privilege and actually reproducing our privilege by using language that only we can use? And this is something Jane Hill talks about. A lot of people who do mock language, right, don't realize that, okay, it's funny, but you're doing something that not everybody can do. You're only doing that because it's your privilege to be able to do that. And so that's something to think about, okay? Now, I just wanted to leave this, and I don't know, I couldn't not mention this because I think we have mostly faculty and students watching, but you see this all the time in the classroom, right? This is a daily thing happening in the classroom, and you don't have to be a teacher to be aware of this. You can be a student who sees this happen, right? You can be a really good ally to a friend in the classroom who you may be aware, right, that something just happened, but it's like, right? Think about how language is doing a lot, right? Language is doing a lot at once. I wanted to mention, you see this in the classroom all the time around gender. I've spoken to so many students who are women who say that they wish that they went to an all-women's school so that men wouldn't speak over them in the classroom. This is one of the oldest things I've heard all the time. As faculty, I think people are often aware of this, but I think as students, it's also important to be aware of these things that we're bringing in, right? These are cultural power issues that we should be resisting, right? We shouldn't be continuing. And it doesn't mean, gaslighting somebody. It means just saying, hey, let's figure out how the words, that we use, the way that we speak, the pauses that we leave. I always have trouble with my pauses, right? Slow down, let other people speak, be aware of the fact that not everybody has the same privilege or feels empowered to use language as everyone else. Okay, I also wanted to mention this in the classroom because there's a lot of language in the classroom that's not spoken. And classrooms are one of the greatest places to look at all of the unspoken language that's taking place that shows that, again, language is not so much mouth stuff, but brain stuff, because we understand, right? Of course, faculty understand what student body language looks like, okay? But also there's dress, there's how you dress, there's how you cut your hair, for those of you who have the privilege of being able to cut your hair, right? You're making a lot of choices that have impacts, that have ripple effects, right? With how society changes. I could, go through additional examples of these, how they intersect with race, how they intersect with sexuality, how they intersect with ethnicity. I want to bring this back to intersectionality because in linguistic anthropology, we have the tools for this, right? How to understand, for example, what we would call direct and indirect indexicality, not to confuse anybody, but in other words, how the words that you use are having lots of direct and indirect impacts on a lot of the structures in society, specifically power structures. Okay, so really quickly to wind this up, I want to get back to our main theme of the year. Our main theme, I'm going to go with our chair and say our main theme this year is actually making good trouble. This is how we can actually use language, I think. So on the one hand, while some of this, I guess you could say, is like a warning, and it's like saying that, language can be something that can reproduce power, right? It can reproduce privilege. We have to be very careful of it. At the same time, I think, language is what's really going to be useful for all of us in terms of remapping and rewriting history, and in a sense, making sure that certain communities are represented well, and that we are resisting power structures, let's say, as opposed to reproducing them.